The air does not move. Heavy and wet, it carries the scent of decaying ferns and primordial clay. 75 million years ago, the day did not begin. It seeped into being, filtering through a dense, perpetual shroud of vapor. The sun is no brilliant disk, but a diffuse white stain in a sky the color of burnished brass.
Here, on the bank of a wide, lazy river, whose currents are as thick as liquid mud, a world of titans breathes. In the distance, a herd of hadrosaurs feeds, their immense weight splintering the branches of giant magnolias, their trumpeting calls echoing across the water. Everything in this world is exaggerated, inflated to the very limits of what physics will allow. It is a place where dragonflies possess the wingspan of a hawk, and the deep silence is broken only by the thrum of a million insects and the earth-shaking tread of giants. To the water's edge comes a young tyrannosaurid. Not the legendary Rex, his time is still millions of years away, but his formidable cousin, an Albertosaurus. 9 meters from snout to tail, a 3-ton engine of destruction, it is the perfect terrestrial killing machine. Its head, the size of an armchair, lowers to drink. It is cautious. Its nostrils flare, sampling 1,000 scents carried on the humid air, but the water holds its secrets close. The predator scans the opposite bank, anticipating a threat from the land, the familiar domain of tooth and claw. It searches for a rival, another hunter of its own kind. In this moment, it makes a mistake, an ancient error committed by millions before it. It is looking in the wrong direction. The surface of the river remains placid. There is no ripple, no splash to betray the danger beneath. Here, death does not arrive. It simply erupts. The explosion is not a sound, but a physical concussion that tears through the air. From the murky depths launches something that should not exist. It is less an animal and more a living battlement, armored in bony plates each the size of a shield. Jaws wide enough to swallow a man whole slam shut on the dinosaur's neck. The sound is a dry, sickening crack, instantly lost in a bellow of shock and agony. The 3-ton predator, a king in its own realm, is thrown into the air as if it were a toy. It thrashes, its powerful legs kicking uselessly at the water, but its throat is trapped in a vise of biological hydraulics, a force capable of bending steel. This is not a hunt, it is an execution. The water blooms with a dark, spreading stain. Then comes the rotation. The monster from the river begins to spin on its axis, a maneuver perfected over 100 million years. The Albertosaur circles on the surface, and a few rising bubbles of silence returns, now heavier, more oppressive than before. The king is dead. Long live the king. Its name is Deinosuchus, the terrible crocodile. And the name is an understatement. We have grown accustomed to the myth of the dinosaurs as the undisputed, invulnerable masters of their age. But reality was always more brutal, more inventive. It conceived of a predator that hunted the predators. To understand this killer of kings, we must look deeper, into the heart of the world that forged it, an ancient dynasty of terror born in the dark water of another Earth. Our journey begins in a lost world. The time is the Campanian age of the Late Cretaceous period, some 82 million years before the first human footstep would mark the Earth. If we were to gaze upon our planet from the silence of space, it would be a profoundly alien sphere. The continents we know are fractured, adrift, in an unfamiliar ballet across the global ocean. The landmass that will become India is a colossal island, racing northward on a collision course with the future of Asia. Antarctica, a name we associate with eternal ice, is cloaked in dense, coniferous forests. At the North Pole, there is no hint of an ice cap. Only the open, restless ocean meets the sky. This is a greenhouse world, a planet simmering in a pervasive, humid heat. The global average temperature is 10 to 15 degrees higher than in our own time. The equator, far from being a cradle of life, is a scorched belt of semi-desert, a zone of intense heat that pushes life outwards. True vitality flourishes in the temperate latitudes, in regions we would now consider cold and inhospitable. But the most dramatic transformation is found in North America. The continent is broken. A vast, shallow sea has cleaved it in two, carving a path from the modern Arctic Ocean all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. Paleontologists call it the Western Interior Seaway. It is not merely a body of water, it is a world unto itself. Imagine an inland ocean, 1,000 kilometers wide and over 3,000 long. Its waters are as warm as a bath, and its depths rarely exceed 200 meters. Where today the farmers of Kansas and Nebraska harvest corn from sun-baked plains, warm waves once crashed upon ancient shores, the water teeming with a ferocious assembly of life. In these sunlit depths, leviathans rule. The mosasaurs, predatory marine lizards whose colossal frames cast shadows the size of city buses upon the seabed. Long-necked plesiosaurs, their serpentine necks striking at shoals of fish with lethal precision. And soaring above the surface, pterosaurs with wingspans rivaling those of fighter jets, snatching their prey from the waves in a flash of leathery wings and sharpened bone. It is an oceanic soup of predator and prey, a ceaseless, violent churn of existence. Yet it is not the depths that command our attention, but the shore. On either side of this great seaway lie two long, narrow continents, Laramidia to the west and Appalachia to the east. And it is here, on these swampy, moisture-saturated coastal plains, that one of the greatest dramas in the history of life is unfolding. The concentration of life is phenomenal. The limited land, combined with an ideal, supercharged climate, has created an evolutionary crucible, a hothouse where new species emerge and vanish with kaleidoscopic speed. Great herds of ceratopsians march through the lowlands, their elaborate bony frills serving as both defensive shields and dazzling displays to attract a mate. Legions of hadrosaurs, the duck-billed dinosaurs, function as relentless engines of consumption, their dental batteries, hundreds of teeth packed into grinding plates, pulverizing tons of coarse vegetation. And reigning over them all, the tyrannosaurids. A family of apex predators, each species perfectly adapted to hunt the specific megafauna of its domain. This world is a world of excess. An excess of heat, an excess of moisture, an excess of life, and an excess of food. The rivers that drain into the seaway are wide and sluggish, branching into endless labyrinthine networks of swamps, mangrove forests, and deltas. It is the perfect environment for an ambush predator. It is a world seemingly designed for a crocodile. And evolution, seizing this opportunity, did not merely produce a crocodile, it forged its absolute, most terrifying incarnation. Against this backdrop, in this paradise overflowing with giant prey, the protagonist of our story finally takes the stage. A creature of immense power, born of the swamp and the slow, dark water. But this titan, this ultimate expression of the reptilian predator, Deinosuchus, was not a dinosaur. In the grand theater of life, every stage demands its ultimate actor. For this waterlogged world of giants, evolution provided a monster born not of the dinosaurian dynasty, but from a far more ancient, patient lineage. A reminder that dominance is temporary, that every kingdom, no matter how terrible, is destined to become a fossil, a whisper in the stone of a world that will, itself, one day be forgotten. It was not a direct ancestor of the modern crocodile. This is a common misconception, a ghost in the bloodline of giants. It belonged to a parallel evolutionary path, a separate, terrifying experiment conducted by nature, the Alligatoroidea. Its dynasty rose and fell, leaving behind nothing but colossal bones and chilling evidence etched into the skeletons of its prey. To comprehend the scale of this being, one must first perform an experiment of the mind. Picture the largest saltwater crocodile of our era, a monster stretching 6 meters, its weight a full ton of reptilian fury.
Now, in the theater of your imagination, place the Deinosuchus beside it. The comparison is not one of degree, but of kind. It is the house cat standing in the shadow of the Siberian tiger. The largest specimens, unearthed from the ancient soil of Texas, reached a staggering 12 meters in length. Its weight is estimated at 8 to 10 tons. This is the mass of two fully grown African bull elephants, compressed into the elongated, armored form of an aquatic hunter. Its skull was a masterpiece of biomechanical engineering. Measuring up to 1.5 meters, it was not merely large, it was designed with an almost absurd overcompensation for stress. The bones were immensely thick, fused into a monolithic structure capable of withstanding colossal forces. Imagine a skull that, on its own, would tower over a grown man. Its maw could gape a meter wide, but the true terror was held within. The teeth of most crocodilians are conical, sharp, and uniform, perfect for seizing slippery fish. The teeth of Deinosuchus told a different story. The front teeth were further back, the arsenal changed. Here were thick, almost round. The reason for this dual dentition is found in its diet. Among its favored prey were the giant sea turtles of the Late Cretaceous, creatures whose own carapaces could span 3 meters in diameter. To shatter such a fortress, one does not need needles, one needs hammers. Its jaws functioned as an industrial press. The front teeth would seize, and the back teeth would pulverize bone and shell into dust. Its body was a living citadel, sheathed in thick plates of bone embedded in the skin, osteoderms, forming an armor so nearly impenetrable that even the bite of a tyrannosaurid would have struggled to find purchase. Yet its primary weapon, beyond the crushing force of its jaws, was its tail. A colossal rudder of pure muscle, it served as a titanic motor, capable of propelling the 10-ton behemoth through the water with terrifying, explosive velocity. See it now, in its element. It lies in the shallows, as motionless as a sunken log. Only its eyes and the rugged ridges of its nostrils break the water's surface. It can remain in this state for hours, for days. The slow, patient metabolism of a cold-blooded reptile allows it to go for weeks without a meal, waiting for the one perfect moment. It is the embodiment of patience and latent power. And when that moment arrives, when a multi-ton dinosaur, confident in its own terrestrial dominion, lowers its head to drink, the log erupts. The water shatters. It is a lunge that lasts less than a second, a physics-defying burst of violence that decides a fate sealed millions of years in the making. It appeared invulnerable, a creature forged in the crucible of a harsher, larger world. But its true power was not simply in its muscle or its size. It was in its perfect synchronicity with an environment that no longer exists. And so it vanished, leaving a throne of apex predation vacant. Its legacy is a chilling reminder that in the grand saga of life, even the most absolute power is transient, and the mightiest empires are eventually reclaimed by silence and stone. Its most secret weapon was not forged in fire or steel, but hidden in the very architecture of its skull. It was a principle of physics, an evolutionary masterwork that turned a simple bite into the most lethal force of constriction nature has ever produced. To comprehend the power of this bite, it is not enough to say that it was strong. That would be akin to calling a supernova a bright flash of light. We must descend into the mechanics, into the brutal biomechanics, into the very essence of the evolutionary engineering that sculpted this living, hydraulic machine. Today, the undisputed champions of bite force are the saltwater crocodiles. They clamp their jaws with a pressure of approximately 16,000 newtons, a force sufficient to puncture the steel door of an automobile. The Tyrannosaurus rex, long considered the benchmark of prehistoric power, is estimated to have generated around 35,000 newtons, perhaps peaking at a catastrophic 57,000. This was enough to pulverize the massive bones of a triceratops. But Deinosuchus, the terrible crocodile, existed in an entirely different league of violence. Computer simulations, born from the meticulous analysis of its monolithic skull, produce figures that defy belief. a force exceeding 100,000 newtons. To visualize this, imagine the entire weight of a fully loaded tractor trailer balanced upon the tip of a single tooth. This is a power that does not simply break bone, it annihilates it, reducing solid skeletal structures to powder in an instant. How could nature conceive of such a weapon? The answer lies not in magic, but in architecture. The skull of Deinosuchus is a masterpiece of strength and efficiency. Observe its form. It is end stresses an animal would encounter when grappling with enormous, struggling prey. The engine driving this anvil of bone was the musculature. The adductor muscles, the great bands of tissue that closed the jaw, were simply colossal. They anchored to immense bony flanges and ran through large openings in the skull known as fenestrae. The larger the muscle and the more robust its anchor point, the greater the force it can unleash. In Deinosuchus, these muscles were as thick as a grown man's thigh. Paleontologist Gregory Erickson conducted pioneering research, physically measuring the bite force of all 23 living species of crocodilian. He discovered a direct, predictable correlation between body mass and bite force. By extrapolating his data to the scale of a 10-ton Deinosuchus, he arrived at these same astronomical figures. But perhaps the most compelling evidence comes from the digital realm, through a technique called finite element analysis. Scientists create a hyper-accurate, three-dimensional model of the skull within a computer. They assign the known properties of bone tissue and then virtually apply the titanic forces of the jaw muscles. The program then paints the skull in a spectrum of colors, revealing points of maximum stress. It is the same method engineers use to test the structural integrity of a bridge or an aircraft wing. The models revealed that the skull of Deinosuchus could withstand these inconceivable loads without the slightest risk of failure. It was, in effect, over-engineered for terror. It is vital to understand that while both were monstrously powerful, the bite of a tyrannosaurus and the bite of a Deinosuchus served fundamentally different purposes. The tyrannosaurus possessed what is known as a puncturing, bone-crushing, bite-explosive impact. Deinosuchus, however, was a master of constriction and pressure. Its robust, conical teeth were not for slicing, but for seizing, for locking onto a victim with an unyielding grip, a prelude to the inexorable, suffocating pressure and the infamous death. One was a hammer blow, the other a vice. Both were pinnacles of predatory design, born from an ancient arms race. They are specters of a world ruled by giants, their fossilized remains serving as silent monuments to a level of biological power that may never again be seen on this earth. The physics that govern their existence has not changed, but the world that could sustain them is gone forever. Some teeth were designed to puncture, to slide through thick hide and bury themselves deep within muscle tissue. They were instruments of septic shock and massive hemorrhage, the tools of a predator surgeon. But the weapon of Deinosuchus was different. It relied not on piercing, but on pure static pressure. Its purpose was not to cut, but to crush. The hunt was an exercise in overwhelming physics. The creature would seize its victim, and then, with a patience born of immense power, it would simply squeeze. It would hold its grip as thousands of pounds of force were brought to bear, until bone, shell, and internal organs began to fail. This was not a swift attack, it was a slow, inexorable destruction, an execution by a living hydraulic press. Armed with this perfected biology, equipped with a weapon against which no defense had yet evolved, these titans of the estuary were poised for total domination. It seemed that nothing on earth could withstand them. Their golden age was at hand. Picture a day 75 million years in the past, along the humid coastline of the Western Interior Seaway. The Late Cretaceous sun filters through the dense canopy of colossal cypress and magnolia trees, its rays falling in golden shafts upon the still, black water of the bayou. The air is thick and warm, a palpable weight on the skin, humming with the drone of cicadas the size of a human hand and the low thrum of primitive bees. The humidity is absolute.
Heavy droplets of dew cling to every leaf, and beards of moss.
Here, in the murky interface between land and water, an empire is governed by a single, silent monarch. Barely visible above the surface, two keratinous knobs break the water, the raised nostrils and eyes of a predator that knows no fear. Its movements are so infrequent, its stillness so profound, that it has become part of the landscape. Its armored back, a mosaic of osteoderms coated in a thick layer of algae, appears as nothing more than a submerged rock ledge. It is, in fact, a living ecosystem. Turtles perch upon its scutes, diligently cleaning it of parasites. Small fish dart and hide in the colossal shadow cast by its body. It is a king, and its court travels with it. A herd of hadrosaurs, the duck-billed Parasaurolophus, makes its way to the water's edge to drink. They are cautious. The hollow crests atop their heads emit low, resonant calls, a network of communication, of constant, low-level alarm. They choose to drink from a shallow spot on the far bank, an instinctual understanding guiding them away from the deep, slow-moving pools. They sense that these dark waters are a territory of death. The Deinosuchus does not stir. These creatures are too small a prize, not worth the immense expenditure of energy a successful hunt would require, and so it waits. It can wait for a week, or two. Its metabolism is a slow-burning furnace, so slow that a single, successful feast can provide it with sustenance for months. As the sun climbs toward its zenith, something new enters its domain. The prize it has been waiting for. An enormous sea turtle, a protostega, the size of a small automobile, has navigated from the salt of the open sea into the brackish water of the freshwater delta. It has come to lay its eggs on a sandy bank, a ritual older than the dinosaurs themselves. Its shell is a fortress of bone, several inches thick, a formidable defense that has protected its kind from the great marine predators, the mosasaurs, for millions of years. But Deinosuchus is not a creature of the sea. It is a specialist in breaking fortresses. The attack begins without a sound, without a ripple of warning. The tail, a column of muscle as powerful as a ship's propeller, makes a single convulsive thrust. The water does not erupt, it displaces, bulging upwards as 18 tons of primeval fury are launched from the depths. For a creature of such impossible mass, the movement is impossibly fast. In this ancient theater of survival, there was no malice, only mechanics. No cruelty, only the cold, perfect calculus of energy and force. It was a world governed by a brutal and elegant simplicity, an equation written in bone and solved in the silent black water. 10 tons of primal fury erupts from the murky depths. The water does not ripple, it detonates. For the ancient turtle, there is no time to register its fate. There is only a sudden darkness, a colossal pressure, and then oblivion. Jaws, wide enough to swallow a man whole, clamp down. The sound is not of flesh, but of geology breaking, the crack of petrified wood amplified 100 times over. Its shell, a fortress perfected over millions of years of evolo, grinding shell, skeleton, and flesh into a single unidentifiable mass. This is not the elegant dispatch of a predator. It is an act of utter annihilation. The victor drags the shattered remains downward into the tangled, submerged roots of a giant cypress. Here, in the Stygian gloom of its lair, it will spend days consuming its prize. This world belonged to it. The rivers, the swamps, the deltas of Late Cretaceous North America. This was the undisputed kingdom of Deinosuchus, the terrible crocodile. It was more than an apex predator. It was a geological force, shaping the very ecosystems it inhabited, culling the populations of dinosaurs on the land and great fish in the sea. The sun rose and set on its reign. Generations of tyrannosaurs rose and fell. Yet the terrible crocodile endured, an immutable monarch of the brackish water. For millions of years, this natural order seemed eternal, carved into the fabric of the planet. But their time was ending. The geological doomsday clock, silent and unseen, had already begun its final, inexorable countdown. The cataclysm that would end this dynasty was not a fiery impact from the heavens, nor the eruption of a supervolcano. It arrived with an almost imperceptible slowness, an insidious creep measured in mere centimeters per year. The architect of this paradise, geology itself, had now become its executioner. Far to the west, in the lands that would one day become the Rocky Mountains, the tectonic plates stirred. A process known to science as the Laramide orogeny had begun, the slow, monumental birth of a great mountain range. The Earth's crust began to fold and buckle, rising with unimaginable force. And as the landmass swelled upwards, the vast Western Interior Seaway, the shallow epicontinental sea that defined this world, began to recede. This was not a tide, but a geological exhalation, a process drawn out across epochs. The sea level fell. The coastline shifted relentlessly eastward, exposing thousands of square kilometers of what was once the ocean floor. For Deinosuchus, this was a death sentence delivered across 1,000,000 years. It simply did not know it yet. Its world, the crucible that had forged it into a perfect killing machine, was drying up. The sprawling, warm estuaries, where it could lie in wait, almost invisible, became choked mudflats, and then, finally, arid plains. The wide, languid rivers that had served as its hunting corridors narrowed into swift channels, their beds deepening, stripping the giant of its ability to launch an effective ambush. Its greatest strength, its hyper-specialization, had become its fatal flaw. Deinosuchus was a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering for a very specific environment. Its immense, heavily armored body was a paradigm of power and efficiency in the water, but on land, it was a liability. The creature was ponderous, clumsy, a titan trapped in a shrinking world. It could not pursue prey across the newly exposed plains. Its entire strategy was built on the water's edge, an edge that was now vanishing. The perfect ruler was left stranded by the slow, indifferent betrayal of the earth itself. Perfection, it seems, is always temporary, a fleeting alignment with a world that never stops changing, and in the end, the planet itself is the only true apex predator. The watering holes vanished first. As the great inland sea that had defined a continent for millennia began its slow, inexorable retreat, the world changed. The herds of hadrosaurs and ceratopsians, vast rivers of life, shifted their Ankin-King wetlands. A king was left stranded. Deinosuchus, the terrible crocodile, was alone. Its empire had been built on abundance. The foundation of its diet, the gargantuan sea turtles that navigated the shallow sea, had departed with the tide. The dinosaurs, once a reliable source of sustenance at the river's edge, no longer came to drink. He was a monarch whose castle was being unmade, dismantled brick by silent brick, by forces he could neither see nor comprehend. That which had been his greatest strength, his colossal size, now became his curse. A 10-ton creature is a furnace of metabolism, demanding a staggering quantity of calories to sustain its bulk. It could not transition to the small fish that still darted in the murky shallows, nor the furtive mammals that scurried in the undergrowth of a changing world. To do so would be to refuel an airliner with a physician's pipette. A slow, grinding starvation began. This story is not speculation. It is written in stone, in the great paleontological library of the Earth. The fossils of Deinosuchus, so plentiful in rock strata dating from 82 to 75 million years ago, become ghosts in younger layers. They grow rarer, then fade entirely. This was not an extinction of fire and fury, but a quiet suffocation, a slow tightening of the world's grip as climate and landscape were remade. The laying for purchase in a world that no longer had a place for them.
The dynasty of the terrible crocodiles was guttering out. They vanished from the record approximately 73 million years before our time, never to witness the final, cataclysmic chapter in the saga of the dinosaurs. Their throne was left empty. But the planet itself was preparing a finale of a far more spectacular kind, an act to final, glorious flourish. The last age of the dinosaurs, the Maastrichtian, had dawned. On the lands of North America, where an ocean once lapped, new titans walked. Living fortresses, the ankylosaurs, were sheathed in bony armor and armed with tail clubs that could shatter the leg of any predator. Herds of triceratops, each animal weighing 10 tons, clashed in ritual combat, their tripartite horns glinting under a Cretaceous sun. And above them all, a new sovereign reigned, Tyrannosaurus rex. This was the apex of predation, a creature that had taken the very concept of the kill and perfected it to a biological absolute. It was larger, more intelligent, and armed with a bite force that could pulverize bone into dust. Its reign lasted 2 million years, an eternity by human standards. Yet on the vast clock of geological time, it was merely the final, fleeting second. Then, 66 million years ago, on a day no different from any other, the apocalypse began. High above the planet, cleaving through the cold, silent vacuum of space, an object the size of Mount Everest entered the atmosphere. It was an asteroid, traveling at a velocity 20 times greater than that of a rifle bullet. For a few terrifying seconds, it was visible to all who looked up, a second sun, an impossibly bright and malevolent star burning in the daylight sky. The age of reptiles had only moments left to live. On the last day of their reign, they felt no alarm. The great reptiles, lords of the earth for 150 million years, had no concept of a threat from the sky. Their gaze was fixed upon the world they had conquered, a world of lush fern prairies and steaming jungles. Above them, a new star had appeared in the daylight, a point of impossible brilliance, growing larger with each passing moment. Then came the impact, a flash brighter than 1,000 suns. The moment the celestial intruder, a rock the size of a mountain, struck the shallow waters of the Yucatan Peninsula, it unleashed the energy of 100 trillion tons of TNT. It was the power of 1 billion of the atomic bombs that would one day fall on Hiroshima, all detonated at a single infinitesimal point in time. In the first second, the world at ground zero ceased to exist. The asteroid and a vast portion of the Earth's crust were not broken, but vaporized, instantly converted from solid to gas. A wound was torn in the planet, a transient crater 30 kilometers deep and 180 kilometers wide. From this epicenter, a shockwave radiated outwards, a silent ring of pure force moving faster than the scream it would create. The very air in its path was supercompressed into a state of incandescent plasma. Thousands of cubic kilometers of stone were blasted out of the atmosphere, hurled back into the cold vacuum of space. Within the first 10 minutes, the sky began to fall. The molten rock, the planetary debris that had been thrown on a suborbital trajectory, started its fiery descent across the globe. Each fragment, from the size of a grain of sand to the size of a boulder, became a meteor, glowing red-hot as it tore through the upper atmosphere. The heavens transformed into a planetary-scale furnace, a celestial broiler turned upon the world below. The temperature at the surface surged by hundreds of degrees. Forests separated by entire oceans erupted into flame in the same terrible. It was the day the oceans began to boil. Within the first hour, the sea itself rose up in fury. The impact had displaced a colossal volume of water, birthing a mega tsunami of unimaginable scale. A wall of water, perhaps 1.5 kilometers high, erupted from the Gulf of Mexico. It scoured coastlines bare to the bedrock, stripping away all life before surging into the vastness of the Atlantic, a relentless wave destined to circle the planet. Even on the far side of the world, on the shores of ancient India, waves 100 meters in height would eventually crash ashore, the final, dying echo of a blow struck half a world away. A Tyrannosaurus,
standing thousands of kilometers from the point of impact, does not die from the blast. It is simply incinerated where it stands, broiled alive by the unrelenting rain of incandescent stone. A triceratops, sheltered in a ravine and surviving the initial wave of heat, now gasps and chokes, its powerful lungs seared by an atmosphere that has turned to poison. Then, the world was plunged into darkness. Billions of tons of soot from the global firestorm and pulverized rock from the impact were injected high into the stratosphere. This fine particulate matter formed a dense, impenetrable shroud, wrapping the planet in a funeral veil that completely blocked the light of the sun. An impact winter began. With the sun erased, the great engine of photosynthesis ground to a halt. The planet's flora withered and died in the gloom. The herbivorous dinosaurs, deprived of their food, starved. Then the great carnivore-rich rock from the impact site fell back as acid rain, turning the oceans into a corrosive soup. Plankton, the very foundation of the marine food web, perished. In their wake went the ammonites with their beautiful spiral shells, the long-necked plesiosaurs, and the apex predators of the sea, the mighty mosasaurs. Ecosystems that had taken 100 million years to build were systematically dismantled in a matter of months. When the dust finally settled, years later, it revealed a planet that was unrecognizable. It was an alien world, silent and gray, blanketed in a thick layer of ash. The first to reclaim the sterilized lands were the pioneer ferns, a monotonous carpet of green spreading over the graves of giants. Their thunderous roars no longer shook the air. Their thrones were empty. Yet in the dead silence, deep in burrows beneath the scorched earth, and in the murky, poisoned rivers, something small and furtive stirred. Life had been defeated, its grandest creations erased, but it had not been destroyed. For the death of kings, the fall of an empire that had seemed eternal, was not merely an end. It was the clearing of a stage, and violent and absolute reset that opened the door for the meek, for those who had spent eons hiding in the shadows of the Titans. The end of one world was the necessary, brutal preamble to the beginning of our own. How can we know the details of a moment that no eye witnessed, an event no hand ever recorded? The answer lies not in ancient texts, but in the very ground beneath our feet. The history of the Earth is a vast and silent book, written in the language of stone, and in the 20th century we finally learned to read its pages. This was planetary in scale, the clues scattered across every continent, buried in deep time. For generations, paleontologists had understood a fundamental, brutal truth. The dinosaurs were gone. Geologists, for their part, could see the scar in the strata, a stark, visible boundary separating the rock of the Cretaceous period from the Paleogene. Below this line, a world teeming with saurian giants. Above it, an eerie silence. What conceivable force could orchestrate such a sudden and absolute finale? Theories abounded, from creeping climate change to a devastating global pandemic. Yet all of them felt inadequate, whispers in the face of a deafening cataclysm. The breakthrough arrived in the year 1980. A team of scientists, led by the physicist Luis Alvarez and his son, the geologist Walter Alvarez, were examining a remote gorge in Gubbio, Italy. Their focus was a single, thin seam of clay, barely a centimeter thick. It was the boundary line itself, the final, indelible punctuation mark on the age of reptiles. Driven by scientific curiosity, they subjected this layer to chemical analysis, and what they uncovered was utterly astonishing: an anomalous concentration of the element iridium. Iridium, a metal from the platinum group, is exceptionally rare in the Earth's crust, having sunk to the planet's core during its molten formation. It is, however, abundant in the cosmos, a primary component of asteroids and comets. Here, in this thin global layer of clay, the concentration of iridium was hundreds of times higher than normal. It was a signature, the cosmic fingerprint of a killer from beyond our world. The Alvarez hypothesis was as simple as it was radical. The dinosaurs were annihilated by the cataclysmic impact of a giant asteroid. The scientific community reacted with profound skepticism. If a mountain the size of Everest had slammed into the planet, where was the scar? Where was the crater? A global hunt for the scene of the crime began, and as is so often the case in discovery, the answer had been hiding in plain sight for decades. Back in the 1950s, geologists from the Mexican state oil company Pemex had conducted gravitational surveys over the Yucatan Peninsula. Their instruments detected a colossal, semicircular anomaly buried deep beneath a kilometer of sediment. They logged it as a probable volcanic caldera and forgot about it. Then, in the early 1990s, a geologist named Alan Hildebrand stumbled upon these forgotten records. He connected the subterranean arc to other, equally strange clues: grains of shocked quartz and fields of tiny glass spherules called tektites, rock that had been vaporized, blasted into the upper atmosphere, and rained back down across the entire Caribbean basin.
The pieces of the puzzle locked into place. The feature buried beneath Yucatan was the Chicxulub crater, named for a small town that sat unknowingly near ground zero. At 180 kilometers in diameter and dated to precisely 66 million years ago, it was the smoking gun. The killer had been found. This global firestorm, this world-ending winter, reset the course of life on Earth. Yet it was only the final act in a world already defined by titans. To understand that lost world, we must read other pages in the stone book, pages that tell the story of a different kind of monster. The first fossilized fragments of Dinosuchus, the terrible crocodile, were unearthed in North Carolina in 1858, but their sheer scale was not yet understood. It was not until 1904, when the legendary fossil hunter Barnum Brown uncovered more complete remains in the Badlands of Montana, that science began to grasp the terrifying reality of this creature. But the most chilling proof of its power would emerge much later. Paleontologists, meticulously studying the fossilized bones of tyrannosaur, their skeletons, they were the unmistakable signatures of massive conical teeth, the bite marks of a Deinosuchus. In the brutal ecosystem of the Late Cretaceous, even the hunters were hunted. The story of a cosmic impact and the story of a river titan are not separate tales. They are interwoven threads in the same grand, violent narrative. Each fossil, each layer of iridium-laced clay is a word, a sentence, in an epic that was written without authors. It is a reminder that our planet's history is one of profound upheaval and constant struggle, a story that continues to be revealed, one silent stone at a time. The evidence is etched deep into the fossil record. Punctures, profound and circular. Grooves gouged into ancient bone. These were not the chaotic tooth marks of another dinosaur. The form, the precise spacing between each terrifying impression, aligned perfectly with the dental architecture of a true river titan, Deinosuchus. Some of these wounds tell a story of survival. The bone around the punctures grew thick and calloused, a fossilized scar. Here is the chronicle of a failed assassination. A dinosaur, perhaps an unwary hadrosaur, had come to the water's edge to drink. In a spray of mud and fury, the ambush was sprung. But the prey was strong enough, or lucky enough, to tear itself free, carrying the ghastly signature of its attacker for the rest of its days. A permanent reminder of the violence lurking just beneath the surface. Other bones tell a different tale. They bear the same deep punctures, but these are not healed. They are surrounded by the scrape marks of flesh being stripped away, the bone itself gnawed and broken. This is the record of a successful hunt, the final moments of a life that ended in the crushing grip of the terrible crocodile. Modern science allows us to bear witness to these ancient struggles with astonishing clarity. Taking a chisel to them, we see the microscopic stress fractures radiating outward from the point of impact, a testament to the colossal pressure unleashed by those jaws. From this data, we can reconstruct the precise force and angle of the bite, calculating the mechanics of a kill that took place over 70 million years ago. The stones speak. They tell us not only of the day an asteroid fell from the heavens, but but of the countless brutal duels fought daily on the banks of rivers long since vanished. These discoveries are more than mere facts for a textbook. They are a key, unlocking a profound understanding of our own utterly improbable existence. Without that cataclysm, without that single rock hurtling from the depths of space, the grand story. When the darkness of the impact winter finally lifted, the world was reborn. It was a ghost planet, shrouded in an eerie silence. A uniform carpet of ferns was the first to reclaim the scorched earth, a monotonous green spreading over the graves of giants. An age of quiet descended upon the globe. But in that profound silence, a new era was stirring. The death of the dinosaurs was the single greatest opportunity in the history of life on Earth. For millions upon millions of years, mammals, our own distant ancestors, had lived as little more than an afterthought in the shadows of the Titans. They were tiny, noctrive of burrows, undergrowth, and perpetual fear. And then, suddenly, the fear was gone. The colossal predators that had hunted them for an eternity had vanished. The lumbering giants that had trampled their homes had been reduced to bone and dust. Before them lay an empty world, a planet of open doors and vacant thrones. Every ecological niche, once fiercely contested, was now theirs for the taking. They seized in burrows, emerged onto the vast open plains, their descendants evolving into the first horses and rhinoceroses. Those who had scurried through the branches of Cretaceous forests gave rise to the primates. Others, in a bold evolutionary gambit, returned to the water, setting a course that would eventually lead to the whales. The dinosaurs' tragedy was our ticket to existence. Had that asteroid strayed by even the smallest of Mard, today might well be ruled not by us, but by the intelligent descendants of the very dinosaurs whose demise cleared our path. Yet what of our story's original antagonist, in the planet's history, a living link to that lost world? How did they achieve this when so many others perished? They held several key advantages, a hand of evolutionary aces that allowed them to weather the storm that ended an age. The first key to their survival lay in their very blood. Their cold, slow metabolism was a brutal advantage during the hungry times of the impact winter, a time when the world's food chains shattered and fell to dust. The great dinosaurs, with their active, demanding metabolisms, required a constant source of fuel. They were furnaces that needed to be fed, and when the fuel ran out, their fires went cold. The crocodilians, however, could simply wait. Their second advantage was their sanctuary. A life spent in the murky depths of freshwater rivers and swamps shielded them from the worst of the apocalypse. As a fiery maelstrom swept across the continents and acid rain poisoned the oceans, wiping out legions of marine life, they remained sheltered. Immersed in mud and water, they were insulated from the immediate horrors that consumed the world above. They did not feast on the future, but on the remains of those less fortunate. In the quiet darkness of the riverbeds, they simply endured. They outlasted Armageddon. And here we find the supreme irony in the story of Deinosuchus. This was the crocodile, that fauna of its age, the very traits that made it an apex predator in the stable world of the Cretaceous, became its fatal flaws when that world began to change. It did not die with the dinosaurs. It vanished long before the asteroid struck, a victim not of cosmic catastrophe, but of geology. It was an emperor tied to a single kingdom, the great Western Interior Seaway of North America. When that sea began to retreat, its empire crumbled. It could not adapt, and so the tyrant fell. Meanwhile, its smaller, more versatile relatives, the ancestors of today's alligators and crocodiles, were generalists. They slipped through the bottleneck of extinction and inherited a wounded Earth. When you look upon a Nile crocodile or an American alligator today, you are seeing more than an animal. You are seeing a living fossil. Their fundamental body plan is so ruthlessly effective that it has remained almost unchanged for 200 million years. They saw the dinosaurs rise to power and watched them fall to ruin. They survived the day the sky fell. They watched, impassively, as mammals grew larger, and as a strange, clever ape began to walk upright. They are a living echo of eternity, a silent reminder that it is not always the largest or the most powerful that wins the great game of survival. Victory belongs to the one who knows how to wait. This is our story too. The carbon in your bones might once have been part of a fern, devoured by a triceratops. The iron flowing through your blood may have coursed through the veins of a tyrannosaurus. We are all the inheritors of that ancient world, born from its ashes and its rebirth. The history of Earth is not a straight line of progress. It is a violent, unpredictable spiral of creation, triumph, and oblivion. We are merely the latest chapter in an infinite book written by starlight and time.
So what then is this story truly about? A giant crocodile that ate dinosaurs? Yes, but it is about so much more. It is a story about the paradox of power. Deinosuchus was an absolute sovereign of its domain. It was perfectly engineered, invincible, the undisputed apex. But it was this very perfection, this flawless adaptation to one specific moment in time, that guaranteed its doom when that moment passed.
Porary. No one rules forever. Evolution does not crown final victors, it merely issues temporary passes to the future. And the rules of the game can change in an instant, without warning. Deinosuchus was not an evil monster. It was a masterpiece of evolution, a living embodiment of the power of its epoch. Its disappearance was not a defeat, but the inevitable cost of perfection in a world that refuses to stand still. Its departure was not a failure, but the turning of a page. It vacated a throne, clearing the stage for new protagonists, just as the great dinosaurs would later cede the world to our own ancestors. We, humanity, now stand at the summit of the food chain, having altered the face of the planet in ways no single species has before. In our brief moment of dominion, we imagine our world is eternal. But the stones hold a different memory. They recall epochs when the very air was a poison, when oceans shimmered with a strange violet hue, and when giants walked the land, their only epitaph a footprint in petrified mud. The Chronicle of Deinosuchus is a profound reminder, a testament to the fragility of any established order and to the beautiful, brutal power of time. It is an indifferent force that grinds empires to dust, only to raise new worlds from their ashes. The next time you stand on the bank of a quiet, murky river, pause, listen beyond the silence. You might just hear the faintest 80-million-year-old echo of a roar that once made the very bedrock tremble. Remember the king who reigned in these waters when the world was younger and filled with monsters. For in the grand 4.5 billion-year saga of Earth, every reign, no matter how absolute, is merely a chapter, awaiting its final silent sentence.